Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's great to see you. I had a great conversation with the saxophonist Jason Rigby that I'm very pleased to be sharing with you today. Gosh, we talked about so many really inspiring things. We talked about success. We talked about the way he incorporates transcribing into practice. We talked about, and I'm going to link this in the show notes below, about a book that the wonderful, amazing saxophonist John O'Gallagher wrote called 12-Tone Improvisation, which combines serialized music with concepts of late John Coltrane's playing, like a one-of-a-kind kind of book that is really worth checking out. But anyway, Jason talks about how he has been incorporating that into his practice. We talk about his sound and his mouthpiece maker, Francois Louis, which is really interesting. Just all sorts of really inspiring stuff. For me anyway, I hope it's inspiring for you. Anyway, thank you for dropping by, and I hope to see you next time. Here's Jason. But I remember meeting you and thinking, this person is like, he's really taking what he does seriously. And, you know, I've thought about that, like, where does that come from? And can you teach that? And can you speak to, like, grit?
That's a really, I don't know that you can teach, I don't think you can teach that. I think that you can convey that to students, like the need to be that way. But you know, like when I started playing when I was in 5th grade. They had the local band director come, and you tried out the different instruments to see, and I want to play saxophone, but I knew right away that I wanted to play what I play because I heard on the radio the Coleman Hawkins recording, from 1939, and I was like, dude, that's it. And so I never had to be told to practice when I was a kid. Wow. But I wasn't really I wasn't really good as far as like task oriented practicing. It was like I just wanted to play. So I had some records, and I would just play along with the records.
Did you start on alto or tenor?
I started on alto, and I was alto for a year, and then I switched to tenor in 6th grade.
Did you transcribe that Coleman Hawkins solo like right out of the gate?
I learned how to play parts of it.
Huh.
Yeah. There was a really cool radio station in Cleveland. I can't remember, it was 90.3, and I guess they played, it was like, I think it was public radio. Maybe at the time, I don't know, but maybe they had NPR during the day, and then they had some classical music, and then at night they had somebody like playing jazz recordings. And I was listening to a rerun of the Indians game on the radio late at night. It was super hot in the summertime, late at night, and then I was switching through the channels, and I found that station. I was like, what is this? And that was it. And I was like, whoa. And then I ended up following that, like listening to the radio station a lot growing up.
You grew up in Cleveland.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like who were your teachers, stuff like that?
So I grew up in a suburb right next to Cleveland called Lakewood, and it was a very like residential suburb, really, middle class. It was a great place to grow up, and
good band programs. It
was a really strong choir programs. Huh. And I was really involved in the choirs a lot, and in fact, I was involved more with choirs in high school than I was with band. But I was a saxophone player first. The music programs were strong. The bands were really good. The choirs were excellent. And so my very first saxophone teacher, I started taking lessons when I was in 6th grade. His name was Tom Tweedle, and he played saxophone and clarinet, and he got me. I went in my first lesson and I told him what I wanted to do, and so he started doing some ear training with me right away. He would sit at the piano and play triads and have me identify them. We did a little theory, reading, and then he did something that was like one of the best things that anybody could have done as a teacher. It was my summer project. I think I wasn't taking lessons over the summer, and he gave me his copy of the real book, a concert version, and he said, I want you to take this book this summer, and I want you to read every melody, but read it up a whole step. And so I did, and then I ended up becoming a really strong reader, and that's one of my strengths, so that was pretty cool. Then I ended up in high school getting even more serious into it, and I studied with this local legend named Ernie Krivda, who is a very unique player, and he's still playing in Cleveland. So I took lessons, every couple of weeks. I would go to his house, and yeah.
But what were you working on with him?
He was like, I didn't really connect with him very well. He was a great player, but I don't think he was a great teacher. Like he didn't really know how to like talk to me at my level, I think. And he tried to tell me about chord scales, and we talked about time a little bit, which was really cool. And we talked about like, he didn't call them this, but later on I realized that he was talking about guide tones through the harmony. But he didn't really have a strong way of making it click for me, and I think I was like, I was more going to him because he was this like local legend, and I was really hoping to like get a lot out of it, but I don't think I really got a huge amount of studying with him.
Oh man!
But I ended up playing in his big band when I was in college.
You went to Youngstown, and I know you had some great teachers there.
Man, yeah. Two really important teachers specifically. Tony Leonardi ran that. He started in the jazz program, and he ran that. I think he started in the 70s sometime, and he was a bass player from upstate New York, Sicilian, old school, beautiful guy, but like could be really hard, really honest, which was great. he also had a lot of connections in New York, and so he was an incredible influence. And he would play gigs with his students, so I got to play with him when I became like a junior and senior. I would hire him for gigs, and it was awesome. And
wow.
And he would play.
He was a saxophone player?
He was a bass player.
Oh, okay.
And when people would come to town, a lot of times they would ask him to play. So he knew Lovano really well. And I remember one time Rick Margitza came to Cleveland, and Tony played with, and Tony would bring his, invite a couple of his students to come. We would ride with him to the gig, and he was great. And then my other really important teacher there was Jim Umble, who you met, and he was just like, I really connected with him. And he's not a jazz player, but he's like one of the world's great classical players, and he studied in Bordeaux with Londex, and I learned so much about like mechanics, sound concepts on the saxophone, and musicality. He was just really encouraging, and he maintained a relationship with him, which is really cool. Tony passed away probably, I don't know, 15, almost 20 years ago now.
Just my little peek into Dr. Umble. He seems like just a really great teacher.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
He would teach in a way where like he wouldn't tell you what to do. He would offer suggestions, or he would say like, I remember once I was playing, my neck strap was really low, and I came in and he goes, "Oh, your neck strap." He's like, "Have you ever experimented with the neck strap in different positions?" And I was like, I don't know. And he said, "Oh." And that was it, And so I came back the next week, and he said, "Oh, you changed your neck." And I said, "Yeah, I noticed that when I pulled it up higher for this sort of sound, it helped." And he was like, "Oh, that's cool." So he would like offer little things to make you think about stuff, but he was never like, "You should do this, you should do that." He would talk about the concept and talk about the musicality of things, but it was never pointing the finger at you and saying, "You need to do this."
I see you do that with students.
I try.
Yeah.
I try,
Yeah.
It's hard because I want to tell them what to do, but yeah, he was very gentle, but really confident with what he knew. And the way he would talk about, I remember working on phrasing with pieces, and he would say, this beginning is a thetic, and this ending is a weak ending, and it was like, I never thought about music like that before. And so we would kind of mark my part, and we would just work on playing this one phrase that way. And wow, man.
There wasn't like a jazz.
There's a jazz saxophone teacher there named Kent Engelhardt.
Okay.
I studied. He was a real he showed me a lot of really cool nuts and bolts.
Okay.
He had great ears, and he was like a Charlie Parker head.
Oh, okay.
He transcribed a whole bunch of solos, and showed me a lot of really cool, just mechanics, practice exercises, and I also studied. He was a really great clarinet player too. I studied clarinet with him.
Oh, cool.
And he and Tony were kind of inseparable counterparts.
Oh, of those teachers, can you think of kind of values that, I guess you spoke about that a little bit, but what are some values that you carry with you from them?
Well, my middle school band teacher, Brian Griebel, was incredible. He just had this really positive energy about him, and he made playing in band. He encouraged me to start playing tenor, because there was an opening in the jazz band, and he just made it really fun. And he was just a really great energy. So the love of that, of embracing music as a fun activity, I feel like he really fostered that. And then my two teachers, choir teachers in high school, were incredible. John Drotliff and Jerry Wondrak. They were just it's like they knew what to do. They must have had great teachers. And in symphonic mix choir with John Drotliff. Every rehearsal, he had a solfege board up with all the chromatics, and he would play a note on the piano, and he would just point at each note, and then and we had to, great. And he would do this thing where he wouldn't say anything. Like, we'd come in and he'd come over and play a note, and then he'd just start pointing, and we would be singing, and then he would start playing something, and then we knew what song it was, and it was just like teaching by demonstration without saying anything. That's really, especially in music, that's really cool.
So it's a good class discipline.
Yeah, and everybody was really into it. It was fun, but you're attentive. Like, what's he going to do next? What are we doing next? And then Umbo had a huge influence on me. Just his thoughtfulness and his pure love for art and music. Like, he's just like a overflowing appreciation for, like, you could just see how much he loved it. Like, and the way he played it just sounded like he loved every note he played or plays, and so that, like, deep connection to just the act of doing that, playing and those are, in a lot of ways, I feel like those are the qualities in all my important teachers that they demonstrated and rubbed off on me.
Yeah, sometimes it has nothing to do with the mechanics or tech. It's just the passion or something behind it.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I imagine some of your first things you were working on were transcribing and developing a sound. Can you walk us through that slow process of what it takes to build a sound?
For me, I got a Sonny Rollins recording called Volume 1. It's with Donald Byrd, Wynton Kelly, Max Roach, and I think Percy Heath. And that record, to me, symbolized everything I wanted to be doing. And so the sound, his sound, and the sound of the cymbals and the feel, it was the most, like, enticing thing ever. And that record is still my favorite record of all time. And so I would come home from school and I would put that on, and I just wanted to, like, close my eyes and like crawl into the speakers, into the sound. And so I would just I played along with Sonny Rollins, and I tried to imitate his sound, and I tried to imitate his inflection, and because it sounded so good, I wanted to do it. And so for me, the sound thing is completely a listening connection, and, like, knowing what you want to sound like. And then I didn't realize that what I was doing was really cool. I just wanted to do it. And I learned like solos by listening. I never wrote anything down. This was in high school. And I would play along with it and try to figure it out. And I figured it out because I wanted to play what he played. It was like the figuring out part of it was frustrating because, like, oh, I can't. What's he doing? It's, and then I wanted to get through that so that I could just play it. I wanted to play what he played.
It's such a cool feeling.
Oh my
when
God.
You can, like, step into the shoes.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like nothing. Like, you listen to it, and then to actually do it is a different experience. And then Umble showed me a bunch of really great acoustical concepts with overtones, and which I had never experienced before, and so I sort of, like, took that and ran with that. And so listening to the sounds that people who you want to sound like, playing along with them, and then working on the mechanics of the instrument, I feel like just helped me. So I don't think I had great technique when I was in high school, and I certainly didn't really have any language, but I had syntax from listening, and a sound that I think got me ahead in certain. I had to catch up with other things.
Who were you besides that Sunny album, which that album, the tunes on there are like no,
yeah,
right? I don't know.
They're obscure.
They're obscure tunes.
There's a song from Finian's Rainbow called "How Are Things on Glaucomora." It's a beautiful ballad, and it's just like so evocative. And but you never hear anybody play that.
Right, but he always did that, right? He always played like Surrey with the like weird, just kind of
weird, like show tunes. Yeah,
it's funny.
And the first song on it is like a minor-ish blues. It's 13 bars, and it has like this weird sort of thing. It's like, whoa, it just sounded so hip. And then he plays, it's like 5 tracks. The last one's sort of a fast thing. I don't even know what it is, but anyhow.
Well, what were some other, were you transcribing others in high school? I mean, I'm sure in college. Who were some other?
In high school, it was mostly Sonny Rollins, and I heard Harry Connick Jr. He had a big band, and I heard him in concert, and I heard some live saxophone players there, and I was like, whoa, that's really cool. So I got one of his recordings, and I played along with a couple of the solos from that, but mostly Sonny Rollins. And then when I got into high school, it was John Coltrane. And
you mean college?
High school.
High school.
So, yeah, and so when I got to college, that was the first time I actually started writing transcriptions down.
Oh, right.
And so I transcribed Dexter Gordon, Stanley Turrentine.
Oh.
I tried transcribing Coltrane, but I didn't really understand it, and I wasn't mature enough, I think, or I'm not sure. But Sonny, Hank Mobley, Sonny Stitt, Johnny Griffin, did a Billy Mitchell solo. Yeah, all tenor players. Then I got into Billy Pierce, who was teaching at Berkeley.
Okay.
And I'd heard some Art Blakey records from the 80s that he was on, and I really got into him. And I transcribed him a little bit. Yeah. A lot of transcribing in college.
Yeah.
It was part of the curriculum, which was really good.
Do you still transcribe?
Occasionally, but it's never writing anything down. It's like I'll hear something and I'll stop and I'll pick it out and just kind of like pick it apart. And so haven't been doing that much lately.
Yeah, me neither. And I wonder like, should I be still transcribing? I want to. I don't know.
Yeah, like the last few things that I've gravitated to have been what piano players have done.
Oh, cool.
Like not saxophone players. Like there was a Keith Jarrett solo from live at the Deerhead Inn, and he played this thing, and I was like, whoa, what is that? And I went back and kind of...
Bye Bye Blackbird by chance? Or?
No, it was... Does he play You in the Night and the Music on that?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was from that. And it was like just this one phrase, and I figured it out, and that's all I needed. And I took that, and I was like, oh, and then I just started working with it.
Yeah.
It's like...
That's like months of
That's
work.
all you need.
Yeah, right.
Like just that little thing, like, oh, cool. I transcribed a little Joe Lovano, like later in my undergraduate time, and I never wrote it down, but he did these things, and it's so slippery. I'm like, what is he doing? And then I transcribed a little bit. I started playing it, and then I kind of like came up with my own explanation of what it was, which was actually the first time I had done that, where I was like, instead of asking somebody, what's he doing here? I just figured it out myself, and I don't know what he was thinking, but I came up with my own explanation of it, which kind of made it more mine. And I heard an interview with Sam Rivers, and he was talking about sort of the same thing. Like when he was developing, he and his friends would write their own etude books, and they would like invent their own scales and practice technical exercises based on the scales that they invented, and try to apply them harmonically. And he was sort of illustrating a more direct way to kind of develop your own personal approach is to just make up your own stuff and your own explanations of things. You know, it's like, oh yeah, cool. Like Lovano might have been thinking this, but my explanation is different. But for me, that's what I want. You know, because then I can figure it out in my own terms.
It's yours. Yeah. So you play on a Francois Louis.
Yeah.
Big tip opening.
Yeah.
And a hard reed.
It's
oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, the thing that puzzles me about the Francois, I actually bought one.
Did you?
And I look at it, and I just can't believe it has that hard baffle.
Yeah.
And I think, well, this looks like a Berg.
Right.
Like skinny like a Berg.
It's wild,
and
right?
it doesn't get anything. Like, look at that. That looks like a Berg Larsen to me.
It's so weird. I met him when I was at Manhattan School of Music working on my master's degree. He came to do a master class one evening, and he was talking about his mouthpiece design. He used to race motorcycles, like serious motorcycle racing, and he used to design. He was like working on engines and designing compression factors for motorcycles, and he realized, he discovered that the tailpipe compression, the way it works with the engine combustion, has a direct influence on how powerful the performance is. And so he used those principles in mouthpiece design. It's nuts.
What?
And I was like, what? Yeah. And then when I went to his house, when he made this, he had pictures of himself like racing high performance motor, like in all the leathers with the knee pads on, like turning, his knees scraping against the pavement, like hardcore race. I was like, who is that? He's like, that was me. I was like,
wow.
My God, he was really into it. And I reminded him of that master class, and he said, oh, he was talking about the compression factor. And something about the way that the chamber is shaped and the way that the air spins creates this thing. And it doesn't look like it would sound like it does, but...
Is it could be because maybe the chamber's bigger? I mean,
I'm sure.
If
He was talking about the way that the air comes off of the baffle, and then when it hits, because I have this spherical chamber.
Oh, right.
So it's like a cup inside this way, and the way it spins around and mixes. He was talking about it, and I was like, whoa. So
so what size is that?
We started with it's a 350 millimeter, I guess, 350 millimeter, and so basically, I went to his house, and he has 2 boxes of trial mouthpieces. One is the open chamber, one set, and the other is the sphere chamber, and they run from his like 5 sizes, from the smallest to the largest. And the idea is that you try them, and whatever one feels best to you, that's what he takes a blank one of those, and you work with that. So I ended up liking the largest of the spherical chamber, and I said, that's the sound I want. And so he said, okay, cool. And then we went into his workshop, and he had boxes of these blanks, and he got the one that was 350, and then they're all the same, and he epoxies the sphere part in. And then we just started working from there, and he opened it up more. So I don't remember, but I think he said that if you were to measure it and compare it to an Autolink, it would be a 14. Is that right? A 14, I think. The thing is, though, that because of the way that the baffle works, it doesn't, I mean, it's fatiguing if you don't play very often, and it takes a lot of control at first, but it's like, it's a little deceptive.
Yeah.
You know?
That was my impression too, because I don't think I can't remember what size I got, but yeah, it was really, you can really give it a lot, and it takes it, but it's not, it doesn't feel stuffy or something.
It doesn't feel stuffy.
Yeah. Yeah,
and he's such a fine craftsman, like, and the amazing thing about being there with him was he would work on it for 10, 15 minutes, and then he said, okay, try it. And I would try it, and he would listen, and he would say, like, he was like correcting me a little bit. He's like, do you always take so little mouthpiece in? And I was like, whoa, he's the master, cool. And I started, like, and it changed. I was like, oh, cool.
That's something I never have had a conversation really with anybody other than my peers, how much actual mouthpiece you should take.
Yeah.
And that seems so important.
I know,
it's
right?
just kind of like, put a little bit.
Yeah.
And you just kind of.
I don't know that there's like a definitive. I was told that your teeth should meet where the reed meets the rails on the side.
I've never heard that actually.
But the rail slope can be, I forget what that's called, but it can be different on different mouthpieces. So, but he was convinced that I wasn't taking enough mouthpiece in, and so I took more in, and I could see what I was like. Oh, you get like a more presence. It's like, okay, cool. Obviously, if there's too much, then it's too far back, and you don't get that projection. Right. Yeah, and then I went back to him like a year and a half later, and to have him make a soprano mouthpiece, and I was playing that night. I went the day before, and the next night I was playing. And basically, he's really generous, and you come to his house, and he has like a guest room. You stay overnight, like above his workshop, and then you're there as long as you need to be, and it's like I think he really likes it because most of the time he's working on his mass product, but I think he enjoys people coming and like getting specialized, and so like basically like I play it with the tenor thing. With the tenor mouthpiece, play it, and I would say like, oh, I want it's a little sluggish on this note. And he would say, okay. And then you get it in like another 10, 15 minutes. Try it now. I was like, whoa. And he would say, oh, the low C sounds a little stuffy. He's like, play it again. And I play it. He's like, play the high note. He goes, okay, give it to me. And then he's like, I was like, whoa. And he said, do you want it to be a little more reactive on the high notes? And I was like, yes, but not too much. Okay. I mean, I was like, and I would ask him like, what are you doing? Like, why are your mouthpieces so supremely superior to everything else? And he said that he works in like thousandths of an inch. And he said that most people will work in hundredths of an inch. I think that's what he said. And I was like, whoa. And he's just like really tiny movements but really precise. Yeah. Really precise. And he's a Renaissance man. Like he built his house. Like he's not like he's really like super knowledgeable about red wine. And so anyhow, I went to have the soprano piece made, and he was like, we went with the biggest one, and he got to a point, and we were opening it up more and more, and he said, we're at the point now where you either are going to play the mouthpiece or you're going to play the saxophone, and I was like, he said, what do you want? And I said, I want to play the saxophone. He goes, okay, well, once we go, there's no coming back from this. I was like, all right. And he opened it up so much, and he told me that it's equivalent to a 7-star tenor opening. It's like a 21 or something, like, whatever. And it's really hard to play, but it sounds like, and I know what he meant, like, it's like the opening is so big that it's almost like you are directly in the neck instead of, but it's really hard to play. Yeah. So
maybe not very reedy sounding.
No, it's almost like an English horn. Like I don't. It's like I don't know what it is, but it's really really cool. But yeah, I have to play a really hard reed, otherwise it just like collapses. Yeah. Wow. So if I don't play the soprano piece, I have to work back into it. And that night we played in Brussels, I think, and he came to the concert, and I played a piece on soprano, and I was like struggling, and afterwards we're in the dressing room and we're drinking some wine, and he's like, so I felt really bad for you. he's like, oh, and I was like, I know, but I couldn't wait. I wanted to play it, and you have to learn how to, Line of questions more on your practice method. You've taken some of that John O'Gallagher book and incorporated it into your own practicing. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could talk about that. Yeah. He sent me a PDF of his first 12-tone improvisation book, which he said I think is out of print, and there's like a new edition of it. I think he has a second book out too. And he breaks the different tone rows down into trichords, so it's three notes, and yeah, it's like a way of thinking about things that I had never really thought about before, So like one example is, one of the first ones is 1+2, so it's a half step plus a whole step, and so I'll just go around the horn playing, so B flat, B, C sharp, B, C, D, C sharp, D sharp, E,
half step and whole step. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, so just going all the way up the horn and then coming back down. And then he uses what he calls rotations, where he takes the bottom note and puts it up an octave. So you start on the second note, so you would go B flat, C, A, up to A. So you're doing a wider leap. And then, so that's the first rotation. The second rotation is you keep it that way, and then the last note, the third note, you put that up an octave as well. So it would be, if you started with the original one, B flat, B, C sharp, the first rotation would be B, C sharp, B flat, up to B flat. The second rotation would be C sharp, up to B flat, and B. So you're making these wide leaps and playing that through the whole register of the instrument. You end up playing these wide leaps and like these collections of tones that sound really interesting. And then you can interchange like 1+2 with 2+1. And so at first it was like just a different pattern of pitches that I hadn't really done before, and like thinking it and trying to hear it was a really great challenge. And so I really dug into that. And then the patterns expand, like 1+3, 1+4, 2+3. And
it's a little overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming. Yeah. So I kind of like, it's like that Stephen Hawking book, A Brief History of Time, where you just sort of read like a paragraph and you're like, whoa. It's like kind of like that, you just take one thing and sort of meditate on it. O'Gallagher, though, that's his language. I don't know how he does it, but he's just unbelievable. Like that's all of that, and he can incorporate it in like tonal playing and then non-tonal playing, and it's sort of like he's flawless with it.
He's rapid, fast with it.
He's one of the most excellent instrumentalists I've ever heard. It's
overwhelming, and he's just one of the nicest. God,
he's so cool.
Yeah,
he's so cool.
But there's a great interview with him and Mark Momas, and John really like lays it out.
Yeah.
But it gets really overwhelming to me, and I didn't really know where to start with it.
He's like so obsessed and fascinated by it. But he gets into it, and at first you're like, whoa, and then after a while you're like, dude. And he's like, no, I can keep going. And he's like, you can go forever. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, like I'll just end up using them as like motive. And one of we played a gig somewhere, and afterwards we were hanging out at Barrow Street Ale House, I think.
Yeah, I know that place.
And we were talking about this and talking about Coltrane, and he was transcribing some of Interstellar Space, and he sent me a PDF of, sorry, I got something in my, he sent me a PDF of his transcription, and he wanted me to like proofread it, and I was like, you want me to proofread it? Come on, man. And it was really cool, and he discovered these trichords that Coltrane was using as a sequential basis of patterns for sequential motion, and it's like, whoa, that's what he's doing. And he analyzed it and he figured it out, and he's like, this is he's transposing, this is a first rotation, he's transposing, and it's like, and it's really cool to see that and realize at least that was his explanation of it. And so I'll take some of those same ideas and just kind of like take one and then use that as a thing, and then just kind of see where you go with it. So it doesn't take much to get you started, and then you just let your imagination go.
That's what I found. Like my fingers go different places.
Yeah.
And,
it's really cool.
It's like, whoa, that opens it up a little bit.
Cool. I mean, I feel like I'm just still scratching the surface, and I've been doing it for a few years now.
Yeah.
There's so much more to do.
Do you practice? Well, like, what does your practice look like?
Well, I always start with playing low B flats, starting with the air. It's so hard.
No tongue, just
and trying to like get it to speak right away. And I've been trying to like open up my sound in the upper register. So I'll do that, and I work on overtones a lot still, and just trying to become more precise and accurate, and trying to make my altissimo range sound fuller, because I feel like some notes sound thinner than I would like. So that's a constant struggle. And then a lot of my practice is either working on music with other people's music that I'm playing, and trying to really get inside what they wrote, to the point that it's like I feel like I wrote it. And then the other thing is like practicing along with composing. So like if I'm writing something, then that just opens up something to practice, you know. It's like come up with these sounds. I don't even know what the harmonic realizations are, and I'll play them, and I'll record back and forth on the piano, me playing them on piano back and forth. And then I'll go back and I'll listen to it, and then I'll kind of just find some stuff around that to practice. And then that will open up, you know, I might come against a technical challenge, and then I pause it. I'm like, okay, cool. I just focus on that. So it's kind of like just sort of spot practicing here and there. But it, you know, it's like it's a rabbit hole you can go down.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the trichord stuff, which is constantly happening. I've always been like super frustrated about the very low number of tunes that I know. Like, I don't feel like I know that many tunes, and so I'll try to work on something, you know, like just I've been working a lot with like time concepts and putting the metronome really slow clicks, and then trying to use different divisions of meter on top of that, and that's just, you can go forever with that sort of thing, and combine that with anything else.
Yeah.
You know Mark Vinci?
Yeah.
I love that guy. He's a mad scientist. Yeah. He's amazing. He showed me, this is years ago, he found a website, and I think there are metronome apps that will go below 10 beats per minute. And he found this website that he was at like 3 beats per minute. So it's like 1 click every 20 seconds. And he was trying to play an entire rhythm changes chorus per click. And I was like, what? And he said he was getting pretty close. Oh my God, like that's nuts. And just that like time, that concept of time, I never thought about it that way, but we can adapt to anything. You know, like if you immerse yourself in a foreign language, it's going to be the most maddening thing at first. But after a while, you'll start to recognize nuances and similarities and repetition, and you can learn how to speak a language that way, just like immersion, you know? And I feel like it's the same thing with that. Like when you come to this really wide time thing, at first it's like baffling, like, oh my God. But after a while, your senses start to adapt to that. It's like when you drive on a highway at 75 for a long time, and then you get off at the exit and it says like speed limit 35, and you're going like 35. And 35 is not slow. You know, like if you hit something, you would crash. But after being on the highway at 75, 35 feels like you're going 2 miles an hour. You're like, and it's because your senses are so used to taking things in so quickly. It's the same thing with time. You know, if you're used to like click happening here, then your senses are adapted to that. But if you slow that down, so it's like 1 click per what you would normally have for 16, eventually your senses will adapt to that. So like, you know, I'll take a song form, or what doesn't have to be a song form, whatever. And, you know, like I used to religiously practice with a metronome, imagining the metronomes being on beats 2 and 4, and try to get that, and then move it to 1 click per measure. And that can be, you can have it be on beats 1, 2, 3, or 4, any of those. then do it one click per 2 measures. Then you have 8 beats that click can happen on. So trying to like play with all of those varieties, and then you can move it to 4 measures or 3 measures. You know, it's like anything. And so now I'm at the point now where like I've done that. I have a lot more to do with that, but like putting the metronome at 10 and trying to play like different divisions of scales or improvising. So like, you know, playing 8th notes or 16th notes or like triplets. Yeah.
When you do that, do you start it faster so you can kind of feel the subdivision of it all? And then, you know what I mean?
Sometimes.
I think I asked you about this once and you were like, no, I don't break it up like that. But so like, let's say you're doing every 4 measures, something easier to wrap your mind around, and it's going to hit on beat 1. Do you subdivide it out? So it's like, okay, well, here's the quarter note. And now I can, or is it just you're listening to that 4 measures as...
I think mentally to begin, whether I'm counting it out or having the metronome click it out, I'm definitely feeling at least every bar.
Okay.
So that's always kind of a semi-subconscious subdivision. But eventually, you know, that subdivision exists within the main goal of nailing that big beat. So the subdivision is always there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what yeah. I guess I was under the impression when you're like Mark Vinci doing that, like is he internalizing quarter notes so strongly that he can do that?
I think it evolves to beyond that a little bit the more you get into it. Where it's I don't know actually. I mean, I don't think you can ever be devoid of like being aware of what the subdivisions are, whether you're like actively like thinking about it or not. But there is something to be gained from trying not to do that, where you are feeling just a bigger pulse. But when you're trying to arrange, if you're playing a song form, trying to arrange the progression of harmonies within that big rhythmic thing, like you definitely have to have some sort of like inner division with that.
Right, that's right, okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think you turned me on to like playing scale patterns in mixed groupings.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 7 and 13, you know, like, yeah, you think you know something that you're doing. Yeah, I got this. Okay, well then change it so that it's, instead of 4 per beat, do it 7 per beat, and it totally changes the way you're wired, and it just expands your technique.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I've heard you say shock the system.
Shock the system.
Yeah, I love that concept.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like muscle confusion, you know, like with athletes. When you practice something over and over again, you develop these neural pathways, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes, the less energy you have to spend focusing on that. But then that also leads to me, I sort of feel like it can lead to an atrophy in a way where it's like you're not necessarily growing as much as you were in the beginning. So to shock the system, muscle confusion, is you have to change it up somehow, so that you have to rethink, oh my God, what, I'm doing this backwards now? How do I do this? And it's like that fight or flight thing where if you change that, if you have that part of what you're doing all the time, it's the rate of growth is, I feel, exponential. You know, it's if you practice the same stuff over and over again, at first you're getting better, and then each day that goes by, the percentage of how much you're getting better gets less and less and less and less. So it's diminishing returns.
Sometimes.
I love to do this thing where like a part of shocking the system is like throwing, I don't know why I came up with this word, but throwing a construct. A construct, it doesn't even, I should call it a barrier. Like say you worked on something, I can play this really well, like improvising on the song form. Cool, that's great. Well, what if you only chose like a major sixth to do that in? You're going to play on that same song form, but you can only play within this limited range, or within this limited range, or you can only play like the upper stack of your palm keys and then below low F, and that's it. Like those sorts of things make you think differently, you know? That's part of shocking the system. Throwing a roadblock in front of you, like you're gonna play 3-bar phrases, or like 2 bars, you're gonna play a phrase and then rest for 3 bars, and then like just weird stuff like that's really challenging, and it goes against the grain, but that's what makes you think about things differently and evolve.
What does it mean to be a success in music, or be successful in music?
I don't think I'm the right person to ask that question. I don't.
I think you're the perfect person to ask.
I don't know. I don't know what it means. I think what I believe is that to be, like, what kind of success? Like commercial success or like success?
Success.
Okay, that's cool. That's what I thought you would say. Knowing you, that's good. That's you and I are on the same page. I think it's finding a way to constantly be discovering and finding the joy in what you do musically, because it can be like there's so many negative aspects to the commercial expectations, you know, that you may have. There can also be a lot of really amazing rewards too, but trying to always be at that like beginner's mind, Zen mind of like the joy in whatever you're doing. I feel like that's success. Working on a body of work, you know. However, I'm not a prolific person at all. Sort of the opposite of that. But like, I feel like expressing yourself in that way and is a success. Being able to share that with others is a success, you know. And being able to create with musicians who you feel are kind of in your own orbit of mindset, I guess. That's awesome too.
Yeah.
Like Mike Baggetta is a really great person to talk to about. Did you interview him?
He's my first one.
Oh man, that must. I mean, it's not going to get any better than that. He's such a crusty bastard, but I love him.
That guy.
This is years ago. He had set up a string of performances in New England with his group, and we were in the car driving up and talking about like, you know, like working the game of the like, you know, the business game or whatever, and like, and I said, I'm like, yeah, you know, like when you have a record come out, you gotta hire a publicist, and he said, why? And I was like, well, because, you know, like you know, you get the word out, and like you need to collect quotes for yourself. He's like, why? And I was like, well, so that, he said, I said, it's part of the game. You got, like, you know, like you got, he said, I don't think you need to play, like, you play the game however you want to play it. He's like, ooh. You know, like, you know, he said, I don't think that you need to do what other people think you need to do. He's like, you just do what you do, and if you can do it, great. And if people aren't going to let you do it, well, then that's their problem. And
yeah, you
know, and I was like, he kind of like had my head spinning, because I kind of came from like the mindset of like, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Because when I was in my undergraduate, like the curriculum, the mindset there was to try to create working musicians. So as a saxophone player, you had to learn how to play flute, you had to learn how to play clarinet, you had to be able to play standards to play at a cocktail hour. You know, you had to be able to be a great reader, you had to improvise. And it's like they wanted to make sure that their students were doing that, because those guys, that's what they did. And there was a whole scene and ability to be working as a musician that way. And so that's kind of that was my mindset. And so that sort of continued, like, well, if we want to have a record come out, you have to do this, you have to do this, and you have to, you know, and obviously, like, it's not a stated, it's not like written in stone. You can do whatever you want to do. But he's sort of like that comment, like, wow. And man, he stuck to it. Like, and I think he's a success, you know, and I'm not saying that because he books these like 40-day tours with no breaks. But I think he's a success because he followed what he wanted to do. He tried out all kinds of different scenarios. He knew what he liked, he knew what he didn't like. And he's just always been consistent with, like, this is who I am, this is what I do. Don't ask me to do anything else, you know. I'm not gonna try to be anything I'm not. That's successful. And I really admire him for that. And the guy, one thing though that I have to say is that he's a hard worker, and he puts the time in, you know, like writing music, practicing, following through with his concepts, the nuts and bolts of calling venues and setting up tours and itineraries. Like, he's a master at that, and he's figured out all of it on his own. I mean, that guy's a success to me.
Yeah. Could I ask you to play something together, or play something alone, or what do you feel like?
Yeah, let's play together. Right on.
Yeah. What's this?
Oh, this is a super balanced action.
Yeah.
That I got when I was in college.
Yeah. In Cleveland or in Youngstown?
I got it actually I was at Youngstown when I got it, but I went to Jersey. Bob Ackerman.
Oh yeah.
Remember that guy? He had 3 SBAs that were all really close, and one of them was pristine. Like, it was original lacquer. It was 100%. And this one just played better.
It's better.
Yeah.
Cool.
And now it's like impossible to find.
$10,000 or something.
More.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's kind of stupid.
You just want to improvise, or you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that cool?
Yeah. No, I love that. If you could go back in time and talk to your early self, or like you notice somebody that's similar to you, and you could give them some advice, what would it be?
I would say it took me a little while to figure out. I mean, on one hand, like, technical work is really important, but I would like to go. If I could go back to myself, my former self, my younger self, or whatever, I would say try to find a way to that whatever your technical aspect thing that you're working on. I don't know, how do I basically, like, try to find a way to make it become more integrated with expression. And again, like, you know, technical practice is integral and it's super important, but I spent a lot of time playing scales over and over and over and over and over again, and then I felt like at that time when I would improvise, I felt like none of that technique was accessible. So try to find some way that you can use that technical thing you're doing in an expressive way. It's a challenge, and maybe it's something that you just learn as you become more experienced. That would be one thing as far as, like, preparation. And then the other thing would be to trust your instincts and try to find the deeper quality in things, and try not to be so dazzled by the hype that are wrapped around certain things, you know, like, forget about all that and just try to, like, erase that and just look at the quality aspect of what's there. And a lot of times you'll find the highest quality among people who are not necessarily in the spotlight, but you do find people who are in the spotlight who are, but it doesn't have to always be like that, I guess. The other thing is to just do the work, because, you know, like, it's not about what you do this week or this month or even this year. It's like, try to put your sights on a far longer vision. And I was having a conversation with Mark Guiliana about this, like, talking about this was years ago, and we were in China. We were playing in China, and we had the day. So he and I went to the Forbidden City in Beijing, and we were walking. And as we were walking, we were just talking about stuff. And I was asking him about, like, just sort of, like, looking to the future about what he was thinking as far as, like, playing with that ensemble. And he said, he's like, you know, like, his manager is Tom Korkitis, really cool dude. And he said, Tom is, like, looking at the 10-year vision. I was like, what? Whoa. And he said, yeah, he's like, you know, like, if we don't get any festival gigs this summer, he's like, he's not really concerned about that. Like, it's about, like, the long game, you know? And that's, like, career, but I feel like that's also directly related to your development and everything. And Mark is super zen, and everything he does is honest and quality, and he makes really good decisions based on what he wants to do from a quality perspective, and, like, patience and long vision. So, like, it's hard to have when you're young, because you just want to, like, you know. So, like, I would rather play 50 performances in a year, or 5 performances in a year that are super satisfying and to me the highest quality. I'd rather do that than play 500 performances a year that are not. And I didn't always used to be like that. And I think I would go back to my earlier self and say, like, this, you know, yeah.
Whew. I hope you liked that as much as I did. Thank you, Jason, for your time. Thank you all for dropping by. If you like this, please spread the word if you can. Like and subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye.